He survived hell in the skies. Now the last of the Bloody Hundredth takes his final flight. Major John Lucky Luckadoo 100, 3 years old, a living legend. The last of a crew that became immortal in history has finally flown home. But to understand the weight of this moment, you have to see the world he flew through. You have to feel the roar of a B-17. The wind ripping past its wings at 200 miles per hour. The smell of burning fuel and fear in every breath. This was not a plane. This was a machine of destiny. And for the young men who climbed into it over Germany in 1943, it was either glory, survival, or death. John Luckadoo was only 20 years old when he first took to the skies over Europe. He joined the 303rd Bomb Group, famously known as the Bloody Hundredth, a unit whose missions would become legend. Their B-17s, the flying fortresses, were designed to dominate the air, but domination came at a cost. Every mission was a gamble with fate. Every flak burst a reminder that death could come from above, below, or from the very sky itself. Imagine standing on the tarmac, dawn breaking over the English countryside, knowing that the next 6 hours could be your last. Engines roar, bombs, load, cruise, pray silently. And then, the signal comes, and the planes start rolling forward. One by one, the flying fortresses lift into the gray morning sky. You can feel the tension in the air, the almost unbearable weight of what's about to happen. And somewhere, John Luckadoo grips the controls, focused, young, brave, terrified, and ready. The Bloody Hundredth earned its name for a reason. They were sent on the deadliest missions, over heavily defended targets in Germany. Every formation was met with flak bursts that shredded metal and ripped wings. Fighters swarmed like predators, diving from the clouds with teeth bared. Many never returned. Their bodies, their planes, lost to the sky. And yet, John flew again and again. Luck perhaps. Skill. Certainly. Courage. Beyond comprehension. One mission in particular, over Bremen, changed him forever. The sky was black with smoke. Flak bursts exploded around him like deadly fireworks. His co-pilot was hit. His plane was damaged. Bombs shook the fuselage. Every breath felt like it could be his last. And yet, John kept flying, keeping his crew alive, returning to England with a plane that barely held together. This was his world. This was his courage. But the story of John Luckadoo is not just survival. It is the story of friendship, brotherhood, and sacrifice. The men of the Bloody Hundredth became a family forged in fire. They shared jokes between missions, wrote letters to loved ones that might never be delivered, and made promises to each other that only the sky could witness. Every lost comrade left a mark on John's soul. Every fallen friend, a shadow that followed him for decades. After the war, John could have retired into anonymity, living quietly while history celebrated others. But he carried the memory of those who never came home with him. He told their stories, kept the legacy of the Bloody Hundredth alive, and reminded the world of the courage it takes to fly into death and still return to tell the tale. He became a living bridge between generations, a reminder that freedom is not given, it is defended by those willing to risk everything. And now, at the age of 103, John takes his final flight not in a bomber roaring over enemy skies, but in spirit, rejoining the crew that never returned. The skies are quieter without him, yet louder in memory. Every formation, every mission, every flak burst, and every engine roar echoes through history because he survived and because he never forgot. The legacy of Major John Lucky Luckadoo is not measured by medals, trophies, or photographs. It is measured in the lives he protected, the missions he completed, and the stories he preserved. He represents a generation that fought unimaginable odds, stared death in the face, and refused to yield. His final flight is a testament to endurance, courage, and the unbreakable bond of the Bloody Hundredth. The skies may have claimed his friends, and time may have slowed his steps, but his spirit soars forever in the clouds he once commanded. Tonight, we remember him, not just as a pilot, not just as the last of a legendary unit, but as a symbol of humanity at its bravest. We honor every man who flew beside him, every mission that tested the limits of fear and courage, and every heart that beat alongside the propellers of the flying fortresses. And as John Luckadoo takes his eternal flight, know this: the skies may be quieter, but the echoes of his courage will roar forever. Major John Lucky Luckadooist, now among your crew. Your story is complete, your legacy eternal. Even decades after the war, the memories of those skies never left John. Every time he closed his eyes, he could feel the vibration of the B-17's engines, smell the acrid smoke of flak bursts, and hear the desperate radio calls of his brothers. And the world had changed, but the skies over Germany remained etched in his mind as vividly as the day he first flew over them. He often spoke of the moments that defined courage, not the medals, not the parades, but the split-second decisions that saved lives. A flick of a rudder, a push of a throttle, a calm word to a nervous co-pilot. These were the choices that kept men alive in a place where death waited in every cloud. And John made those choices, time and time again, with precision, skill, and a heart that never wavered. He remembered the faces of those he lost, the young men with dreams, just like his own. The ones who would never see home again. He carried them with him for the rest of his life, ensuring their names were never forgotten. Each reunion at veteran gatherings, each story shared with historians, was his way of keeping their spirits alive. The Bloody Hundredth was more than a unit, it was a family, and John was the last living testament to its glory and sacrifice. Through interviews, documentaries, and public speeches, John shared not just tales of heroism, but the raw, unvarnished truth of war, the fear, the loss, the heartbreak. He refused to romanticize the hell he and his comrades endured, instead showing the world that courage often exists not in moments of glory, but in the quiet, terrifying seconds when survival is uncertain. As he aged, John became a bridge between generations. Schoolchildren listened in awe to his stories, veterans honored his presence, and historians pored over every detail of his life and missions. His existence reminded the world that history is not just written in textbooks, but lived in the hearts of those who survived it. When the news came that he had passed, the nation mourned. The last living member of a legendary squadron, the final witness to a chapter of history that shaped the world, had taken his eternal flight. Tributes poured in from politicians, military leaders, veterans, and civilians alike, each one acknowledging that courage, sacrifice, and honor do not fade with time. And yet, as solemn as his passing was, it also became a celebration, because Major John Luckadoo lived a life few could imagine. He survived the deadliest skies of World War II. He carried his brother's memories for decades. He shared wisdom, courage, and humanity with generations that never knew war firsthand. And in the end, he rejoined the crew he had flown with, forever a part of the sky he loved, the history he shaped, and the legacy he preserved. The flying fortresses may have been machines of war, but through John, they became symbols of endurance, hope, and the unbreakable human spirit. His story proves that even when war is hell, humanity can shine through. That even when the skies are darkest, courage and loyalty light the way. And that even when time takes its toll, true heroes never truly leave, they soar forever in memory and legend. One of the most harrowing missions John ever flew was over Schweinfurt, Germany, one of the deadliest targets in the European theater. The B-17s took off at dawn, engines screaming into a sky thick with anticipation and dread. Every man on board knew the odds were stacked against them. Anti-aircraft fire rained down like meteor showers. Messerschmitt fighters streaked through the clouds with merciless precision. Flak bursts, shredded wings, pierced fuselages, and tore through the very air around them. John gripped the controls, sweat pouring from his brow. He glanced at his co-pilot, whose hands shook slightly on the yoke. He whispered a calm word, steadying the young man's nerves. Around him, the plane shuddered violently with every near miss, but John's focus never wavered. He had flown missions like this countless times, but each one was as terrifying as the first. In those moments, skill and courage were the only shields against death. The bomb bay doors creaked open, and the squadron released their payload over the target below. Flames erupted. Factories, rail yards, and smokestacks became tiny, fragile silhouettes from above. They had done their duty, but the price was always high. Planes were damaged, comrades were wounded or lost, and every second on the way home was a fight against exhaustion, fear, and the relentless enemy. Yet somehow, John brought his B-17 back to England. Engines, smoldering, fuselage, riddled with flak holes, but alive. Every safe landing was a miracle. Every mission survived was a testament to the extraordinary skill and bravery of men like him. And each time he returned, the young men who were flying alongside him, brothers, bound by shared peril, grew to respect and trust him, calling him lucky not just for his survival, but for the way he kept others alive. Over the years, John carried stories that would chill and inspire anyone who heard them. Tales of crewmates who were blown out of the sky, parachuting into enemy territory and surviving against impossible odds. Stories of planes damaged beyond recognition, yet somehow limping home under sheer willpower and determination. Stories of courage that didn't make headlines, of fear conquered in silence, and of loyalty that transcended death itself. And yet, what made John's story resonate most was not just the missions, but the human side, the camaraderie, the laughter amidst terror, the letters written to loved ones before flights that might never see their endings. Every man on those planes had someone waiting for them. Every man knew the stakes. And John, for all his luck, carried not only the skill to survive, but the burden of witnessing loss again and again, and living on to tell it. Even decades later, when he would recount these stories to new generations, his eyes glimmered with memory, not with fear, but with respect for the skies, for the machines, and for the men he flew beside. He often said that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. And no one exemplified that more than the men of the Bloody Hundredth, the flying fortresses, and especially John Luckadoo himself. As his final years approached, John remained humble. Medals, honors, and recognition mattered little. What mattered was remembering his fallen brothers, passing on their stories, and ensuring that history did not forget the price paid in those skies. His legacy was never about fame, it was about memory, survival, and tribute. And when the news finally came of his passing at 1:00, the world mourned not just the man, but the last living connection to a chapter of history few could imagine. The skies had grown quieter, but the echoes of his courage would reverberate for generations. Major John Luckadoo had completed his final flight, reuniting with the crew that never returned, joining them forever in the endless blue above. Through his life, through his stories, and through the planes he flew, John ensured that the spirit of the Bloody Hundredth, the flying fortresses, and all those who risked everything in the name of freedom would never fade. His courage, his sacrifice, and his memory live on, an eternal reminder that heroes are not just forged in battle, but in the hearts and minds of those who survive to tell their tale. One story John always carried close to his heart was the mission over Berlin. It was late 1943, and the Allied air campaign was reaching a critical point. The Luftwaffe was relentless. The sky above Germany was a battlefield tracer, fire slicing, the clouds, flak bursting like deadly fireworks, and enemy fighters descending with predatory precision. John's plane, a B-17 Flying Fortress, was battered from the start. The engines were already struggling, but the crew knew retreat was not an option. They climbed into the icy stratosphere, the air so thin that every breath felt like a battle in itself. Bombs were loaded, calculations made, and the target, the heart of enemy industrial power, waited below. As they approached the city, the flak came like a storm of iron. Shells ripped through the formation, sending plumes of smoke and fire spiraling into the sky. John's co-pilot froze for a moment, and John's steady command brought him back from panic. Every decision mattered. Every flick of the controls could save a life or end it. The B-17 shuddered violently, but John guided it through the storm with a calm born of experience. The bombs were released. Fires erupted across the city. But the return journey was no less perilous. Engines smoking, fuselage pierced, wounded men groaning. The crew fought against exhaustion, fear, and the cold. One of the gunners, barely 19, had lost his radio. He could not call for help. John improvised, directing the formation to shield him. Hours later, battered and exhausted, they returned to England. Every man alive, every man forever changed. These missions defined him. But what truly made John lucky were the moments of humanity amidst horror. The quiet words of encouragement, sharing a laugh to keep spirits alive. The camaraderie that made strangers brothers in the face of death. He remembered every face, every laugh, every tear shed in silence. That bond, the unspoken loyalty, was the real legacy of the Bloody Hundredth. After the war, John dedicated himself to remembering those who didn't make it. He became a historian, a storyteller, a living memory for those whose lives were cut short over Europe's skies. He spoke at schools, military academies, and veteran gatherings, recounting missions with precision, but never forgetting the human cost. He made sure the names of fallen comrades, once mere numbers and logs, lived in memory and in honor. Even in his later years, John flew small planes whenever he could. To him, the sky was freedom. It was memory. It was where the echoes of his brother's courage still roared. Friends would watch, amazed that a man in his 90s could still handle the controls with the precision of a seasoned pilot. But John didn't fly for thrill, he flew to remember. When he passed at 103, tributes poured in worldwide. Veterans saluted, historians reflected, and civilians marveled at a life that had spanned the deadliest skies in history. Yet, despite all the recognition, John's final wish was simple: to be reunited with his crew, his brothers who had never come home, and now, he has taken that final flight. Not as a man bound to earth, but as a spirit reunited with the men he loved, the planes he flew, and the sky that was their shared home. The engines may be silent, the air calm, but in memory, the B-17s roar once more. Formation wings cut through clouds, bomb bays open, and the courage of the Bloody Hundredth soars eternally. Major John Luckadoo's story is not just one of survival. It is the story of sacrifice, brotherhood, and unwavering courage. It is a reminder that history is more than dates and battles. It is lived in the hearts of those who faced the impossible and endured. His legacy will continue to inspire every generation that looks to the sky and asks, what does it take to be brave, to survive, to honor those who cannot speak for themselves? And now, in the endless blue, John flies with his brothers, together forever, an unbroken formation against the winds of time. Even in the quiet moments of his later years, John never stopped feeling the pull of the sky. Every creak of a propeller, every whisper of wind through trees, every distant roar of a plane reminded him of the brothers he had flown with. The missions they survived together, and the ones they did not. These memories were his compass, guiding him through a life that had seen unimaginable loss, heroism, and resilience. He often spoke of one simple truth: courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. And every mission, every takeoff into the firestorms over Germany, every landing with smoke in the engines, was proof of that courage. The flying fortresses weren't just aircraft. They were vessels of bravery, loyalty, and hope. They carried men who faced death daily, yet believed in a cause greater than themselves. And John Luckadoo, as his friends called him, was a living embodiment of that spirit. As he reached the end of his remarkable life, the world witnessed a final chapter that seemed almost poetic. The last of the Bloody Hundredth, the man who survived where so many others fell, has now joined the crew that never returned. The skies, though quieter without his presence, are now full in memory. Every roar of a B-17 engine, every flash of sunlight on a bomber's wings, every story passed down through generations carries his essence. This is more than a farewell. This is a celebration of survival against impossible odds, of lives lived with courage, and of the unbreakable bonds forged in the crucible of war. John Luckadoo's story reminds us that history is not just written in textbooks, it is alive in the hearts of those who lived it and in the memories of those who honor it. The flying fortresses may have carried men into battle, but through John, they carry their stories forward. Through him, the world remembers the price of freedom, the cost of courage, and the enduring spirit of those who gave everything so that others might live. And now, as Major John Luckadoo takes his final flight, the last living echoes of the Bloody Hundredth soar together once more. Their engines roar in the wind, their wings stretch across the horizon, and their legacy is etched forever in the sky. The world has lost a hero, but history has gained a legend. The last of the Bloody Hundredth is home, and his story, brave, unyielding, eternal, will never be forgotten.